Hi everyone, and welcome to Chapter 1, the sentence. Today we're going to be taking notes. You should have gotten a note-taking sheet today in class. It's a sort of a golden color. If you do not have one of those, you need to go back to my blog and print out some. Now, as we go along, you're going to be taking notes on the note-taking sheet. Now, I've left blanks for the things that I think are most important, but you may have little notes to yourself that you want to write in the margins or in the space provided, and that's perfectly okay. At some points in the video, you may need to pause the video so that you can have more time to write, and that's okay too. You can do this at your own pace. And then we're going to go over these in class and we'll get some more examples. But you should have these when you come to class. Okay, so the sentence. The first thing you need to know when we're talking about sentences is how to tell a sentence from a fragment. So let's start by looking at the definition of a sentence. Now, a sentence is a word group that has a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. Take a minute and write that down. Also, just something for future reference, we'll talk about this later on, another name for a sentence is an independent clause or a main clause, but we'll be talking about those later in the year. Now, we've already talked about a little bit in class before we started writing sentences to answer questions that there are 5 things that a sentence must have to be a complete sentence. And here they are. First one is a subject, a verb, a complete thought, capital letter at the beginning, and ending punctuation. Now, when we're doing things like answering questions, that's usually going to be a period, but in different circumstances it can be an exclamation point or a question mark. You also need to know what a fragment is. Now, fragments can be tough sometimes, because sometimes a fragment will look like a sentence, but it's missing one of those 5 things that are necessary to have a complete sentence. And when we look at examples in class, that will become a little more obvious. And something for future reference. A group of words that has a subject and a verb that does not express a complete thought, but is attached to a sentence, is called a subordinate clause. Now, it's only a subordinate clause if it's attached to another complete sentence. All right, so take a minute to write down all those notes. Now we're going to go on to talking about subjects and predicates. The first thing you need to know is the definition of a subject. So a subject, very simply, tells whom or what a sentence is about. Now, finding the subject of the sentence, you just ask who or what is doing something, or who or what is the sentence about. What's the main thing or person or idea that the sentence is about, and that will usually lead you to the subject. Now, when we're talking about subjects can come at different places in a sentence. First of all, a subject can come at the beginning of a sentence, can come in the middle of a sentence, or it can come at the end of a sentence. And we'll go over examples of these in class. Now, when we talk about subjects, we can actually break that down into 2 different categories or 2 different ways of looking at subjects. We have a simple subject and a complete subject. So it's all one subject, but it's in 2 different parts. First of all, the simple subject. The simple subject is the main word or words that tell what the sentence is about. Now, your simple subject will always be a noun or a pronoun. Always. Then we have the complete subject. The complete subject is the simple subject plus all the words that describe the simple subject. Now, one thing to note, your simple subject will always be a part of your complete subject. The complete subject is just going to be longer sometimes. Now, let's talk about predicates for a minute. A predicate is sort of the other half of the sentence. The predicate tells something about the subject or what the subject is doing. When you're talking about predicates, you have a simple predicate and a complete predicate, just like we did with subjects. And the predicate will be everything in the sentence that is not the subject, and it includes the verb. So let's look at the difference. First of all, we have a simple predicate. Simple predicate is also called the verb, and it's the main word or word group in the predicate of the sentence. Now, we often use the words simple predicate and verb interchangeably. That means if someone says simple predicate, it means the same thing as verb. And if somebody says verb, it means the same thing as simple predicate. Now, we also have a complete predicate. The complete predicate is the verb or the simple predicate plus all the words that describe it. Now, some important information. The verb or simple predicate of the sentence usually comes after the subject, but sometimes all or part of the predicate comes before the subject. And we'll look at some examples of those in class in the different places that predicates can come. Okay, so now that we know all about what a subject and a predicate is, let's look at something that makes it a little more complicated, but not much. Compound subjects and verbs. Now, the word compound, when we're talking about grammar, just means that there's more than one. Okay, simply put, we're going to have more than one subject or more than one verb. So, compound subject and verb. A compound subject is when you have two or more simple subjects joined by a conjunction that share the same verb or verbs. So when you have two subjects doing the same thing, like Jim Bob and Sally Mae went to the store. We have two people, Jim Bob and Sally Mae, but they did the same thing. So that's a compound subject. A compound verb is when you have two or more verbs joined by a conjunction that share the same subject or subjects. So, if we say Jim Bob ran and jumped, Jim Bob is the subject, but he did two things. So ran and jumped are a compound verb. Okay, next on your notes, you have kinds of sentences. We're going to go over the kinds of sentences in class, so you don't have to worry about filling that part out right now. Now, if you need to back up or replay this video to get all of your notes, that is perfectly fine. I hope that this helps, and write down any questions you have so that when we get to class, we can discuss them. All right, I will see you in class. Bye.